You're listening to Somewhat Frank with me, Frank Gruber. After working in the corporate world for a decade, I decided to blaze my own path by co-founding Tech Cocktail, which helped catalyze local startup communities and eventually turned into TechCo Media, a site which grew to millions of readers and was eventually acquired. Over the past decade, I've interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs and thought leaders from some of the fastest growing and most successful companies in history. And along the way, I've learned amazing lessons from my experiences. So we're going to talk about startups, tech, innovation, and their intersection with personal life, and anything else on Frank Gruber's mind. So let's get started being Somewhat Frank. Somewhat Frank is produced with the help of Established, my new company. All right, Frank Gruber here, Somewhat Frank. I'm here with Jason Shellen. He is a product leader. He's been at Slack, Pinterest, Google, AOL. He was at AIM. He's done a lot of different things, as well as he's an entrepreneur. He's based out in San Francisco. He's launched products and actually sold products to large companies, one of which is a company called Brizzly, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Jason, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for doing this. So you just recently resurfaced with two updates. And I wanted to talk about both of them and share a little bit more about the details. So one of which was a blog post on your personal site that ended up on Medium, and it talked about what you've been up to. And it really revolved around you were coping with some chronic pain, and I wanted to just talk about what happened, give us kind of a lowdown on what happened with that and what you learned from it.
Yeah, so the post is called the long middle part, and it's probably a post that was brewing for probably a year in my mind because I've been dealing with chronic pain for over 18 months. And it started off as a simple shoulder injury, something that lots of people do, and kind of devolved from there into some real sensitive nerve pain, kind of that blinding pain. I spent, probably months of my life lying on the bedroom floor, just kind of out of it, and spent a lot of time thinking about, my life and would I ever be better and those sorts of things. And, over the course of maybe the last year, through some physical therapy and other interventions, it's definitely kind of unwinded things for me and made sure that I'm on that path to recovery. But there were some dark moments and some a lot of personal reflection during those times. And the point of the post was, I'm not done. I wish I could say I'm done, and I'm starting some new venture that's going to revolutionize things in one way or another. But the honest point is just that I'm trying to rejoin life, find joy again, and realize that recovery is not a straight line. It takes a long time. Before I was talking to you, I went for a 3 mile walk and did all of my physical therapy exercises that I need to do for the day. So
Wow.
it's a daily process, kind of fighting back from this thing.
Wow, that sounds really tough. So first off, appreciate you sharing that out there. That had to be difficult to get it out. First off, it's probably was like
It was, yeah,
brewing for a little while, as you were working through this.
yeah.
And it's like, how much do you want to share, publicly? And so obviously, it's very shows a lot of strength to be able to share it and share like what can happen to people, and obviously it'll help others along the way. So
Thank you.
what's the biggest lesson I'd say if you were sharing this with other folks? What's the lesson you learned from that process?
You know, I wish I had shared earlier. I mean, some of it was physically difficult to share earlier because, like using the computer,
Yeah.
I had eye pain, I had arm pain, hand pain, it's still wrestling with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I wish I had, maybe had my wife sit down and, write some of these things up for me, even if I couldn't type them out physically myself.
Mhm.
Just because I realized, some of the walls we put up around, especially pain, for some reason, and if you look around you, everyone's dealing with something.
Mhm.
It's you don't feel as alone. Pain is very isolating, right? If you're sitting there feeling terrible, it really does help to have someone say, "Hey, I know what you're going through," or "I'm so sorry," or any of that. And immediately after I posted, I had, you know, probably hundreds of people online who, said something nice and many of them reached out privately to say, hey, I've been dealing with something similar for 8 years. I've been dealing with something similar for the past year and a half of my life.
Right.
I had to take off, a year of work because, of back pain or something like that. So,
Mhm.
it sounds it sounds trivial to have, people say, hey, my back hurts, but that's sometimes code for all sorts of other things that are going on. And the other thing is I would not want to take on anybody else's pain. It's very personal. I know how it feels to me and it's been terrible, but so many other folks are dealing with some chronic pain that is it's really, really difficult, tough stuff.
Great. Yeah, no, that's so true. And as I woke up a couple days ago, I read that post, but I felt like my right rotator cuff also might be torn. So it's like I don't think I have the same kind of pain, but I'm definitely feeling the dings from years of abuse, I'd say,
Yeah, yeah.
with athletics and things like of that nature.
But I mean, one other lesson is, I'm talking to you now from my home office where I have a standing desk and
Hmm.
a mat on the floor and
Hmm.
it's adjustable and all that good stuff. You can't work in a big company and not have one of these, evaluations, but actually doing the work to sit in the, chair properly and,
Right.
remind each other like, hey, take a walk, take a break. It's so easy to, have that hero complex, like, well, I'm just going to finish this thing. And, you look up at the clock and 3 hours later, your
Right.
head's, down in some code or something.
Hmm.
It's not good. We need to be better to ourselves, I think, is one of the big
I
lessons.
think it's a great lesson and a great point. It's daily intervention, basically, and daily routine.
Totally.
So it sounds like you've totally changed your routines to basically attack this.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's great. I love it. So, okay, so switching gears a little bit, also saw another update recently about Brizzly, which was a company you started and was I think was backed by some big names back in 2009 or 2008 timeframe. Third-party interface for social, so like Twitter, Facebook, to AOL in 2010.
Yes.
And it had, I forget, did you have, who supported that as from an investment? Wasn't it like
Polaris
Polaris? That's right.
and Softtech Ventures, which is
Right,
now Uncorked.
right,
So Jeff Clavier.
right. Okay,
And then, privately, some folks like Mike Jones, who runs Science,
right.
um, Ashton Kutcher, all
Mhm.
the, some
Great names.
Ron Conway, all those sorts of folks were backing
Behind
that.
it. That's great. So that sold. You went to AOL. You worked on AIM for a while. I think you're the last person to work on AIM, which is kind of ironic. I was one of those folks along the way as well with Livestream.
That's
So
right.
we kind of yeah, there's some similar path there. But anyway, um, you then went on to Slack and actually Pinterest and Slack. But in that process, it sounds like you are now back with Brizzly. Can you talk a little bit about how this all came together?
Sure. So, I mean, I had Brizzly was the first company that I had started myself,
Mhm.
meaning that I had to go out and raise financing, and we actually had an earlier product called Plinky that we had
Oh
started
yeah, I
that
remember that. Yep.
and pivoted from, I kind of knew when we were releasing that, like, I don't think this is the thing, and and so after we launched that product, we hunkered down and started thinking about what was happening with sort of some of the social networks and created a quick interface that was like, what if you could see your stream but also have some sort of like superpowers? Like at the time, Twitter didn't expand photos in line. They didn't even allow you to upload photos.
Hmm.
People were using all these third-party services for photo hosting.
Right.
And so we thought, well, why don't we just take all of those great extra features and bake them into this, but also explain trends and let our community provide descriptions along the side of like why these things are trending. And over time, we turned that into its own guide. So it was like a Wikipedia of now. So it got really big. People really liked Brizzly. They liked that interface better than the Facebook or Twitter interface itself. We showed you your Facebook timeline as well.
Hmm.
Um, but when we sold the company, it was because we had added this group messaging aspect to Brizzly. And I think the folks at AOL said, okay, we need a reboot of messaging, and these folks seemed to get it. And it was very sad because at the inside of AOL you have a great big team of folks to lead, and we left Brizzly up, but it was kind of in maintenance mode a little bit for maybe a year or two
Right.
while we were there, and we decided to pull the plug on it before we left because no one was going to take care of it, and all the people who had worked on Brizzly were leaving essentially,
Right.
and so it was sad because we had thrown years worth of effort into what we consider to be a superior interface or whatever. But so many like fun things had come out of that, like the group chat aspect. We called them picnics, and then the Brizzly guide, which I'm sad that that one's still not up now because I think it'd be very valuable, especially as we're having this like huge conversation about what's fake and what's real,
Right.
and how do you determine what you should be looking at. And so, thought about it, almost immediately after leaving, like, man, I wish we could have that, at least the brand, it had this cute little bear icon. And, I'd come up with the name, after having spent some time in Tahoe around, you know, bears were going through the trash and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
I had bears on the mind.
Yep.
Um,
Love bears, and it was your baby. You had
it
basically
was, yeah,
sold your baby to
exactly.
AOL, and it was still there, but you saw that
I
it wasn't
did.
going to go further past that, and obviously they were switching from products to media. So that was the other piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like an odd pairing at the time.
Yep.
And the process of, rebuilding AIM,
Hmm.
giving it a new interface it was not swift, for a number of reasons. And then at the end, it kind of was not well supported, like our new vision for what things should be. So it kind of, it didn't end well. So it was like a real bummer.
Right.
So fast forward a couple of years, I had started another company, created an email app called Boxer, which did really well, and then spent some time at Pinterest as a product leader, and then Slack as the head of product for their platform team.
Yep.
So during this time of recovery and early on before the nerve pain started,
Hmm.
I had reached out to AOL and said, "Hey, is there any condition in which you would sell me back the brand or the domain or any of this sort of stuff?" And they said, "No, we're not doing that, or we'll evaluate that." I think they were going through their Yahoo
Hmm.
oath transition,
Right.
and they said, "Well, we'll evaluate that stuff, but maybe in a year we'll get back to you."
Hmm.
And so it took a long time, but they eventually did, and they said, "Yeah, sure, we'd be up for that." And we talked about price for a long time, and then finally last December, I think I was able to buy Grizzly.com back, and
Wow.
here we are. Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. But then it's
Yeah.
just gone. It
Right.
just like it doesn't even save anywhere. I had first thought, oh, what if this was just a thing that just like saved all your drafts?
Right. So that's really interesting. And then so you waited a while to get it back, and now you got it back. And what is Grizzly now? Can you share a little bit about what you're up to?
Sure. So I mean, for now, I thought it'd just be a funny way to announce to friends that I had the domain name back,
Hmm.
if there was at least something there.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of friends who recently stopped using Twitter, or they deactivated their accounts because they're frustrated with some of the policies
Hmm.
and some of the abuse that is enabled on Twitter and Facebook. And so it was inspired by these folks leaving, that I thought, what if there was just a form that if you just felt like you had to say something, you could just, put it in here, hit send, you still get that, that feeling of, hey, I've contributed, or
Belt it
something.
out, right? That's funny.
But then,
What you just said is I thought of that. I was like, why don't we have a place I can just vent? You're right on point, I think, with this, and that's why I thought it was really interesting.
yeah, so I mean, what I didn't expect is any of the response to this. I
Right.
really thought, I thought it would be, and seriously, it was like, half a day of moving some pixels around, and
Yeah.
um, it's like all of three HTML files or something,
Hmm.
and just put it out there like, hey, so I bought this back, and people immediately thought, one of two things. They thought that's awesome. I love that bear. That was really fun.
Yep.
Um, and this is a funny idea. But then there were like a whole other breed of people who are like, I don't get this. This isn't funny. Why, why is, why would anyone ever do this? And, you know, I, I sympathize with those folks too, because I don't think that's what's needed. I don't think people need a place to just go scream into the void necessarily.
Hmm.
I think, I think what we need is, the companies who are behind, um, some of the larger social networks and tools and things like that to really embrace more community management and realize that people are upset and they have good reason to be upset, and you know it's been years that some of us have been sounding the alarm about these tools
Hmm.
being misappropriated. And so anyway, it's maybe my small contribution in that direction of like, hey, please wake up, because we don't have to use these social networks. We we wake up every day and consciously choose to use them, or maybe unconsciously choose to use them sometimes. And people could switch to something else.
Yeah, no, it's a piece of the movement towards, well, first off, taking a break from social, as well as,
Hmm.
you know, asking for a little bit of change. And you're seeing, there's some, I mean, starting to see some chatter out there. Um, I don't know if you saw even recently Jack Dorsey and some others talking about the way their platforms and what they're doing,
Hmm.
and how they can kind of police it better. And obviously, you know, Facebook has a similar issue and has been cracking down on policies and whatnot. So really
Right.
interesting. I do think there's potential for it to be a personal journal of thoughts. It might be interesting.
Definitely.
So there
Definitely.
is potential for this to have more life than just a place to send it to the void. So that's why I thought it was interesting. And obviously,
For sure.
it did. You got picked up a couple different places already, just by putting it out there. And like you said, it could
Yeah,
help.
that was surprising. Yeah, right away, somebody from TechCrunch reached out and said, "Are you sure you're not saving these things somewhere? Because it's just a form. People type in it and it hits send, and
Yeah,
if I were a bad actor, I guess I could be,
collect all
saving
the.
all these crazy things that people are putting in there,
Mhm. All
or
the
who knows
secrets.
what they're putting in there." Exactly.
Yeah.
And I said, look, please look under the hood at the code. It really is just
Hmm.
a reset button.
Yeah.
And they said, okay. And I thought it was just, that was it. And that turned into a TechCrunch article, and then Slate wrote about
I
it, and
saw
then
that. Yeah.
syndicated it in France. And I
Oh my
have
goodness.
I
It's
have a lot of
international. It's an international reset.
exactly. I should translate the paragraph that's up there
Wow.
into French. But yeah, it was a little surprising, but I think maybe what's not surprising is that people are frustrated,
Yeah.
and this is one of those things.
And I think there's an opportunity in that, right? So I don't know if that's what you're thinking about doing full time all the time, like, but at the same time, it could be something that has legs. You continue to iterate on that, and obviously you're a product leader. I'm sure you thought of this already. So
Yeah, I mean I think the area that still interests me is that I think the power of social media means that you can dip your hand into this stream
mhm,
and improve the conversation, and then keep the good bits, and then learn from each other and like improve that content. And that's one of those things that I feel like more companies should probably be focusing on. And that's kind of what I have brewing is it's something in that area to kind of let's improve the conversation.
I love it. Let's make the social platforms and that whole play a better place is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
Well, great. I couldn't think of a better person to lead that up. So,
Thank you.
um,
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time and sharing what you're up to. And just as a parting note, if someone were to try to go and buy their company back, any bits of advice for anybody that has that? I've seen a couple people do it, and not too many people do. So, if there's anything that takeaways for anybody that's listening, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I am certainly not a bridge burner. When I leave places, I like to make sure that I have more friends leaving than I went in with, and that's been helpful, right? And I had to use those connections as well to get Brisley back. Made sure I still knew people in legal and finance and things like that, so that should the day ever come, that there was at least somebody friendly on the other end of the phone or email.
I think it's a great point. Relationships matter, and
Absolutely.
you never know where anyone's going to end up. I mean, really. So I think that's a great
Exactly.
point for people to walk away with. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing both points. First the kind of update about what you've been going through, and obviously it
Hmm.
sounds like it was really rough. So I appreciate you coming out and sharing and improving upon it and giving people a tidbit about how to create a better routine and maintain themselves, as well as just the let's improve the internet. I think that's a message. So Jason, thank you so much for joining Somewhat Frank. I kind of did a rebirth as well with Somewhat Frank. It took a hiatus for a while to build TechCo, so now we're back with
Nice.
brand and as a podcast, which is much more manageable than pumping out hundreds of articles. so, so I appreciate
Well,
your time. We can find you
no problem.
where? Shellen.com, right? And at Shellen?
Shellen.com till the end of time, and then Shellen on just about everything else.
Great. Thanks so much for joining me
You
and
got
sharing
it.
your insights.
You got it. Thanks, Frank.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening. This is Somewhat Frank, signing off. Frank Gruber. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe online, iTunes, SoundCloud, Android, wherever you can find it. Somewhat Frank Podcast. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks so much.